This is the painting that's at the actual battlefield. So we're talking in southeastern Mexico. And Santa Anna had become overconfident. Houston just kept retreating westward. Texans were running away. It was over. And he had about 1,000 men with him. And so his army was reaching about 3,000. So he split it off into smaller groups. He still has, outside of his own, 5,000 other Mexican soldiers. Sam Houston has maybe 800 militia, disorganized Tejanos and Texans. And right along San Jacinto River, there are a bunch of mesquite trees and then there's a little clearing. And he moved Santa Anna in the hot afternoon of the 21st, moved into this clearing basically to take a rest. Is that where we went yesterday?
Yeah.
And what were the bushes around him?
Spiky.
What were they called?
Spiky.
Mesquite. Spiky. That's a technical scientific term. Spiky. Mesquite trees. And he trapped himself. And he didn't really set up pickets or guards. Sam Houston saw it and attacked. And totally took the Mexicans by surprise. Rolled up their line and swept into the heart of the Mexican forces. That they were regular forces, had a little bit of training, but they're disciplined group, and they just ran. The battle was over basically in seconds. But as the Mexicans ran, hundreds would be cut down and slaughtered as revenge for what happened at Goliad and the Alamo. It was over like that. Over 650 would die. Over 300 would be captured. Almost all of them while trying to run away. But they were cut off by those mesquite trees. And it happened so fast, only 11 Texans would die. They had 2 6-pound cannons with Sam Houston. And they just barely had enough time to unlimber them, and the battle was over. So imagine this chaotic scene. And there's a few groups of Mexican soldiers who were captured. Santa Anna able to flee. So right about here, there's a little mound. There's kind of a ridge and kind of a gumbo clay mound. And I know what you're thinking. You want to go to Texas right now, don't you? I will draw you a picture of the map and show you exactly what happened. So here is flat ground and then the mound. Get it? You feel like you're there now? Santa Anna and his staff went up there. Now they're in blue, but I don't have a blue pin. I have a purple pin. So I'll draw you accurate representations of Santa Anna on top of this hill. Here is Santa Anna and his staff, right? This guy had 2 arms too. Which one's Santa Anna?
The one with the mustache.
He's a generalissimo, yeah, so he has a big hat and a mustache. Okay, so that's Santa Anna. The Texans saw this. These two, and they're just literally unlimbering their cannon. And they hadn't fired. And they want to fire their cannon. What fun is it just to unlimber your cannon and do nothing? So imagine we have a cannon, and it kind of goes back like that. Here we have some Texans. How do we know these guys are Texans? They have really big hats. They're Texans, right? Big hats. And they start firing their cannon at this real pocket of men. So imagine Santa Anna out there watching this after, but he knows he still has 5,000 men. And if he can escape, it's not over. He could rally those forces. This just would be a skirmish and fight again. Not a big deal, he's thinking. So he's watching this distracted. And all of a sudden, a cannonball hits by. A 6-pound iron, solid iron shot, cannonball, hits here, and then kind of bounces up the hill. So imagine Santa Anna sitting there, and bang, bang, bounces past. Because the cannons, they can't elevate them high enough to hit on top of the hill. Bang, bounces past. Bang, bounces past. And then all of a sudden one lands about 30 feet in front of Santa Anna, bang, in front of Santa Anna, and starts bouncing. Now, what should Santa Anna have done? What did he do? He put his foot out to stop the cannonball. Puts his foot out, bang! Falls down. His leg is ripped off. It's being held there by a few basic ligaments and sinew, just snapped right there. Santa Anna fell down in agony. I don't know if you know this, but that would hurt really bad. And so boom, he's down, screaming in pain. They rig up a structure, and they're still going to take him out. But he's screaming. Well, he's also potentially an opium addict, so they had a bunch of opium. And so they feed him opium. He's smoking opium to relieve the pain. And they're taking him off, high on opium, leg ripped off, being held, basically just ripped pants and a few little sinews, bleeding profusely. And they start sneaking away to try to get into the mesquite to continue the fight. Well, Santa Anna's soldiers thought he was dead. They think he's gone. And so they're like, it's over, and we're probably going to be lined up and shot. One of the men, who was one of the few that were captured, saw him, and they scream, "It's Santa Anna! He's alive!" In Spanish, of course. And what happens? The Texans are like, "Oh, there he is." And they capture him and take him away. And that's how they capture Santa Anna. High on opium with a leg ripped off. Yeah. High on opium. And they pull him aside and he signs the treaty. So everyone got that? He signed away Texas independence. High on opium without a leg. We're not done with Santa Anna and the legs. There'll be another story. He'll eventually take it back to Mexico.
Did he lose his other one?
Well, he'll get artificial legs. About 1,000. I'll tell you the whole story down the road.
Multiple artificial.
But, well, yeah, for different days. But here's the thing. Mexico said this treaty was illegitimate. He was captured under pretty big duress and not himself. But that's how Texas won their independence. By Santa Anna and that terrible wound. Houston was wounded too, but the Battle of San Jacinto, that would be Texan independence. And they declared independence, and they created what's called the Lone Star Republic, taking that flag from the Come and Get It flag. This is the original one, and then they would adapt it to this, copying the U.S. flag. With the Confederate, and so that would be the flag of the Texas Republic, and that's basically the flag of the state of Texas now.
Why 3 stripes?
Well, they wanted red, white, and blue, so they wanted 3. They wanted to kind of look like that, but there's no particular reason for 3, except to give it kind of a symmetry. And when the Confederacy would first form, their flag was very much like this, called the Bonnie Blue flag, and then the Confederacy would adopt a flag basically this way, and that would become the Confederate flag. And so, we'll get to the Confederate flag down here. Well, here's the thing right away. Okay, Texas is independent, but what's Texas? They're a republic, and they went in with slave codes. Remember, the whole thing was about slavery, and they had slave codes. Remember, slave codes meant slavery. But what is it? Tejas' southern border, according to Mexico, was basically a creek called the Nueces River, right? Texas claimed everything north of the Rio Grande, which is not that big of a river either. But the Rio Grande goes all the way up into present-day Colorado. That means potentially all this land, which could be 7 states with slave codes. Now, Texas assumed that they would be annexed right away. They just assumed it. They sent word to President Jackson. But annexation came up to a big issue. Slave power. Remember the 3/5 compromise. Northern Democrats and Northern Whigs did not want this. Jackson did not address annexation because he thought it might hurt his Vice President, Martin Van Buren. So the United States responded with, "We will study it." And so Texas is now a weak republic, but the whole issue of slavery in the territories then will be personified by Texas. And look at what Texas claims. They claim all the way to here. And what is Wyoming? All slavery, which is an effective barrier during the expansion westward and also north of 3630. Remember, 3630 from the Missouri Compromise only affected the Louisiana Purchase. This is a big deal. This will be the trigger. Slavery in the territories focused on Texas for the Civil War. So let's review. The election of 1836, Martin Van Buren, the Democrat vice president of Andrew Jackson, from poor, humble roots, old Kinderbook, will be running. Jackson didn't want Texas to become an issue. Van Buren ignored Texas. Didn't happen. Because Northern Democrats were fearful of slave power. Van Buren would win. But Texas is lingering. It's one of those things that everybody's talking about. Old Kinderhook. Well, the Van Buren administration would be, we already talked about the Panic of 1837. He did create an independent treasury, which was a replacement for the bank. It's not a bad idea, but the way they did it was not as good as it could have been. But Texas was still the issue. And because of the panic and Van Buren being blamed for it, he didn't want to touch Texas. And so that was a lot of, we'll get to it. And while the panic is going on, and Texas is, the republic itself is in real trouble. By the way, here's his Vice President, Richard Mentor Johnson, and at the Battle of Thames, at the Thames where Tecumseh died, he took credit for this. And the thought was he would be the next president. So a little poem was made up for him. And I'm still trying to figure this one out. It doesn't really roll off the tongue. Rumsey Dumpsey, Rumsey Dumpsey, Colonel Johnson killed Tecumseh. They rhymed these two things. But the point is, first off, they were bad at rhyming, but secondly, Tecumseh, everybody remembered. They remembered Tecumseh, and this is 1838. So, what's coming up is a massive potential catastrophe, potential war that can be only personified. Already ready? Good. I think everyone did pretty well. Somebody might have to be disappeared for knowing too much. All right, are you ready for this? A catastrophe is coming that can be only personified by this dramatic clip. Yeah, that's coming. Something horrible is coming. Okay, I just wanted to show you that clip and had no reason. But that's also how I paid my way through college. By taking cannonballs in the gut. Jesus.
Every
time I see that, it makes me laugh. I didn't want to be alone. So, the election of 1840 would be one of the most important elections in American history. The Democrats are going to nominate Martin Van Buren, but he's tainted by the panic and Texas. And he once again will not make a stand on Texas. And Southern Democrats are beginning to believe that perhaps he is opposed to slavery because of his unwillingness to make a stand on Texas. And this is a cartoon showing, I showed you this once before, the hells of the panic. So the Whigs now have an opening, but the Whigs have a massive problem. So once again, Texas, no one wants to deal with it. The Whigs' problem. The Whigs' problem is they are an anti-democratic elite. They're opposed to democracy, but the democracy is here. And they're the elite. So the picture on the right are one of the new mansions built in Long Island for the new wealthy capitalists. In the bottom is a mansion for Southern plantation owners. This was the anti-democratic elite who, for the most part, didn't agree on most things, except they hated democracy. And they're a minority. Well, we don't have quite majority rule in the United States, but still, the majority in each state picks the electoral college. And so their thought was, we got to figure out a way to split the Democrats. Find something to split the Democrats. And they figured it out. And they figured out the key to how to beat the Democrats, the democracy. They'll split it on an issue that they'll divide the small farmers and the working people. Two main issues. The first one was pure unadulterated nativism. This is 1840. Just the beginning of the first wave of immigrants from, what two places did I tell you those immigrants were coming? The majority. Ireland and where else? Yes, what is now southern Germany. And what religion were they? These Catholic immigrants are coming in to take your jobs. They're not real Americans. They're drunkards. They're going to steal your children. They had all these stories, and so use that to split people up. But the other thing was this. They figured it out. Most not most, but the people who decide elections don't vote on issues. They don't vote on what's going on. They don't really know what's going on. And you can play, or you can find something that they might see and understand and vote for, a cultural difference. And that's how they would split them on culture. People who start elections don't know what's going on. I mean, what happened in the last election in 2024 was all the people who were undecided all at once all voted Republican. And it led to a kind of unprecedented sweep, even though the margins were tiny, but it was enough to win. You know what the #1 thing that was searched on the Google the day after the election? These are by adults. What is a tariff? Because people just voted for various reasons and all of a sudden it hit them. Oh, what's a tariff? I have no idea. I hope you do. By the way, that's what's happening to the stock market now. President Trump is promising a 20 to 30% tariff, which he's going to do, and that will raise prices by about 20 to 30% all across the United States. That is coming. And that's what happens. But I find that, okay, you might think that's good policy or bad, protect the industry. But the point is, people have no idea. And I was like, oh, I should look into this. And that's what the stock market is doing for me. But let me look. Should I look? Let's see what it's doing right now. One thing about the phone, ooh, it's tanking. These people are realizing prices are going to go up. Back to this thing. What's the cultural issue? Well, they looked at it as, why did people vote for Jackson? They didn't vote for Jackson for policy, for issues. They voted for Jackson because they liked his image. And they tried to get that image and find a cultural indicator to play that image. And it worked. And they figured out the key to elections in democracy. Play on image. That is what the people who decide elections vote on. The Whig plan, sell an image of a common man. Did everyone catch that? Find an image of the common man. Find an image of that Westerner, of someone who lived in a log cabin. They figured that's what they liked Jackson for. Not for what Jackson did, but people said, I want to be like Jackson. Davy Crockett. Remember Davy Crockett, the guy who his political career was over? In 1832, that was the Whig plan. Davy Crockett would be that fake Andrew Jackson. They presented him as this frontiersman. That's a picture of him, and this is after he died, but trying to take advantage of Davy Crockett's fame after this. And say, he's a frontiersman. He was on the prairies. He killed a bear when he was a little kid. He's just like Andrew Jackson. So they would vote for what's like Andrew Jackson, but not really Andrew Jackson. Now, it turned out Davy Crockett was a disastrous candidate. He wasn't very good at it and would be sent home, and that's why he went to Texas to try to rehabilitate his image. But that's why everyone knows Davy Crockett. And today, we would call this, it's known as the culture wars. They try to divide people by culture. And does it work? Really well. And what countries do this? All of them. Every country now, if they have democracy, does this. Because those people in the margins who are busy and don't really pay attention to near the end of the election, they are susceptible to these culture wars. Really susceptible. And so that is why Davy Crockett would become known, and Disney could do a show called Davy Crockett. And this actually, they took the 3 ones in on television, scrunched them together, and made a movie. So that's the poster for the movie. That's why they was able to work. And that's why people knew Davy Crockett. And do you want to hear the #1 song in the United States of America? And it was #1 in Britain in 1955. Do you want to hear it? It's going to blow you away. Some of you might have heard this song. #1. It was big everywhere. All across Europe, too. Nobody has heard the song? Yeah, from last year. #1. He killed him before. Wrote this song And Davy Crockett, I'm just going to share this really quick. We have Davy Crockett's lunch boxes. They actually killed lots of raccoons to make coonskin hats. The Davy Crockett suit, Davy Crockett frontier bag. There's a star, Davy Crockett, at the movie sewing. I mean, Fess Parker became internationally known. And I got to show you one thing, the Davy Crockett Alamo. And I'm not going to lie to you. If I would have been a Ute, if I was a Ute, I would have wanted this. If I was young. If I was 8 or 9, oh yeah, I would have. Who else would have wanted this? 8 or 9? A few of you, yeah. A Ute? A Ute. I would have wanted that. I would have wanted that. All I had was a rock, but I would have wanted that.
Was it a good rock?
So, I'm not going to tell you about that weapon. The craziest weapon ever made. But, the Whigs. So the Whigs, that's their plan. Find someone who will split the Democrats by portraying Andrew Jackson. And their man, William Henry Harrison. They would get a Jackson. But he was the general. The hero of the Thames, where they killed Tecumseh, but the biggie was Tippy Canoe. 29 years earlier was that battle, and everybody still knew the battle. He was simply known as Old Tip. He was a wealthy man, the second son of a rich plantation owner in Virginia. He had a plantation in Virginia, a plantation in Kentucky, and in essence, a plantation in Indiana. He was incredibly wealthy. He was born from old wealth, not like Jackson at all. But they could portray him as the general, and people remembered him from Tippy Canoe. And it was brilliant. Now, candidates did not campaign for themselves. They had surrogates and newspapers and rallies and things like that. And what they did is, they found a Westerner who could get some Democrats. And that was the plan. To fool them, to say, he's like you, a common man. He's just like you. And in the back, he will protect you from the Catholics. But then he avoided all issues. He avoided all the issues, especially Texas. If anybody asked him about Texas and Texas annexation, they would respond with the Battle of Tippecanoe. He was the hero. And it really was effective. So they portrayed this as basically, he's this rough-hewn Westerner who could barely read or write. But he really, in secret, wanted Clay's American system. Henry Clay and that tariff, bang, internal improvements. Clay's operating it. Get rid of the independent treasury, get him. That's why Democrats would say he's like a toy. This is one of the little jumping jack toys they had then. Clay and Daniel Webster, the most prominent Whigs. But no one knew that. What did they say? Tippy Canoe, Tippy Canoe. And this is the basic thing. Elite politics, but portray the common image. I'll never forget in 2000, George W. Bush, from old wealth, incredibly rich. His dad moved to Texas to get rich and go, oh, money, but this is old financial wealth from Massachusetts. Big money. But he portrayed himself as this common Westerner cowboy. And they even bought him a ranch during the campaign. So he'd go around the ranch and they would use a chainsaw and chop wood, or cut wood. And yeah, I remember people saying, I like George W. Bush. He has a ranch. They bought it for the election. He still lives on that ranch, by the way, now a retired president. So but my point is, they still use that today, right? To today. And this is the thing. They could divide people over cultural issues and not economic. So make the campaign have nothing to do with the rules that government make for the decision on the economy. And what do they do instead? It's culture. Fear immigrants, and he's Andrew Jackson. It's almost like you could use current campaigns and just kind of plug it into 1840, and it would be almost exactly the same. He came up with a great slogan, Tippy Canoe and Tyler too. And this slogan is going to become so well known in the kind of the comical sounding name Tippy Canoe that people will forget about the importance of this battle. So what we have there, this hid the divide in the Whigs. So they got a Northerner, Harrison, as top of the ticket. And he's pro-business, pro-tariff, pro-internal improvements. And then a Southern plantation owner named John Tyler. John Tyler is the vice president, Northern and Southern. He was a plantation owner. But they both hated democracy, and that's what tied them together. Tyler was completely opposed to Clay's American system. But who cares? He's the vice president. Vice president only has two functions, constitutional. Break ties in the Senate. What's the other one?
Hope the president dies.
Well, not hope. Even though that's why presidents will call their vice president the angel of death. But, yeah, wait for the president to die. But that hasn't happened. That's never happened in American history, so nothing to worry about here. So they could get a Northern and Southerner, talk tippy-canoe, go on to the election. The Democrats just couldn't wrap their minds around this. Soon, this campaign will be dubbed the Log Cabin Campaign. A newspaper in New York, owned by John L. Sullivan, same guy who said, "Go West, young men." This newspaper was a Democratic newspaper, and it tried to mock Harrison by saying he's running like a man who doesn't care about the issues at all, but only wants to sit on the front porch of his log cabin and drink hard cider. He was trying to insult him. But the Whigs are like, that's exactly what we wanted. We want people to believe we were sitting on the front porch of our log cabin. And so they portrayed the image of a log cabin. They built a log cabin in a clearing out of sight of Harrison's mansion, so they could bring reporters, and he literally was sitting on a rocking chair, and they kind of look at him, and he's sitting on his front porch. He lived in a mansion. They would start doing these parades with log cabins. The first ever political buttons would come about with a little log cabin you'd wear on your chest to show that. Soon everyone's going to copy this. Here's a log cabin almanac with that little tidbits about science and news, and you could read this. They would do, and then they very effectively portrayed Martin Van Buren, who really did come from humble means. He was born with nothing. They portrayed him as the elite. So there was this little kid's toy, and you'll put a picture. You had one picture and another picture behind. So imagine on both sides. And you would look through a little viewfinder, kind of holding your nose. You twist it back and forth, and it gave the illusion of movement, like a little cartoon. It wasn't much, but remember, this is also 1840. And so here it is of Martin Van Buren, a beautiful goblet of White House champagne. So drinking the drink of the wealthy. And look what happens if he drinks a common man's hard cider, this ugly mug. So kind of go back with the faces. He even had a billiards table in the White House. You know what billiards? You know what pool? So imagine pool without the holes in the corners. And you score by knocking your balls and have them in the corner. So they don't go down holes, they just have to get them in the corner. So think about a glorified pool game. Now, I don't think of that as a game of the elite, but in 1840, they said Martin Van Buren was elite. He doesn't like hard cider, he's not one of you anymore, he's one of the rich, and he plays billiards. And they did these political rallies, where they would have wagons would carry floats of cabins, they carried big banners of cabins. They even had this Whig bowling ball, which I find hilarious. And they would have this, they go town to town, that little slogan, they push it through and everyone cheer for the Whigs. And have little sayings like, the Democratic ball sent on, dear Van, not the man, two guys they ship, old Tip. And at the end of the parade, they'd have barrels and barrels and barrels of what waiting for everybody?
Cider.
Hard cider. Remember who gave you this alcohol? It was William Henry Harrison. They bought so much alcohol, the Harrison campaign, from one distillery, it's a family name, that distillery's name became synonymous with alcohol from the election of 1840. Anybody know the name of that distillery? The Booze Distillery. Booze was a family name. And that's where the term booze would become from alcohol, was the election of 1840. And it blew the Democrats away. Here's another one. There's log cabin, Harrison's stuck in there, can't get out. He's tied to Andrew Jackson and Old Hickory. The trap sprung, the Kinderhook box was caught. And the thing was, the Democrats were shocked. They're just absolutely blown away. No way people would actually fall for this blatant trick. Harrison was the elite of the elite. How can people believe this incredibly wealthy man who's only friends with the very wealthy could be a commoner? There's no way people could fall for that. And so this is a tough road to hoe. It is, and they try to say he's just one of us. Here's trying to get to the Capitol, but he following Jackson, who's still alive, and there can't get past the hard cider and log cabins. And he's going to have to go back to old Kinderhook. And they try to say, he's old Kinderhook. He's one of you. He's old Kinderhook. He's okay. And that's where okay comes from. The election of 1840. Old Kinderhook is where okay came from. So if you ever see okay, which is now international, people know what okay. It comes from the election of 1840 and old Kinderhook. That's okay. So this election gave us okay moves. That's where it came. Oh, and political campaign bonds. I don't know what this. When I first saw this, what is this pig face person doing here? Anybody know what this pig face person is doing? On the right track. This was an insult. Yeah. So he's doing that to Van Buren. When the election happened, it blew the Democrats away. Purple is Harrison. Green is Van Buren. Remember, the popular vote only matters within states. This was a national victory. The Whigs, which were kind of the minority party, won a sweeping victory. So they had enough people who voted Democrat previous, or thought they would be normally Democratic voters, voted for the elite. And it worked. And the Democrats were shocked. How could people be fooled? By the way, the Democrats now have an issue here. Are they going to continue by saying, we represent you, we represent the working people, or are they going to start playing on image too? Of course. And that's what everyone's going to do. Play on image. You could almost put the 2024 campaign into this campaign. It's amazing how it's just almost the same stuff. It's kind of unreal. And Harrison is now elected, the oldest man up to that time ever elected president. And a lot of people said he was too old, he was 60, and a puppet. I know it's weird. We just had the oldest man ever elected. And today is the birthday of the oldest man ever to be president, Joe Biden. So, and Biden was 82. And so it's amazing how, 60, that seems young. And of course, that does seem young. Moving on to somebody in this room. At his inauguration in March of 1841. Inauguration today is in January, but that would be changed by the Constitution in 1933. Harrison didn't want to show that he knew what was going on. He is going to give, to this day, still the longest inaugural address in history, where he laid out the issues and gave this long speech. And it was sleeting, and he wanted to prove he was young, fit, and vigorous. He didn't wear his beaver felt hat, because he could take the reins. He was already kind of sick, but after this, still, to this day, the longest inauguration speech ever, he got even sicker. And within 3 days, he was bedridden and would spend the rest of his life in that bed. 40 days into Harrison's presidency, he died. The first ever president in American history to die in office, William Henry Harrison. How about saying the first ever president to die? So you can ask George Washington about it today. The first ever president to die in office, William Henry Harrison. What did he die of? Well, I was told, cold, got pneumonia, died. Because back then, what did you do for pneumonia? Hope for the best. Bleed you, give its free antibiotics. But he probably did catch pneumonia, but that's not what killed him. It was actually a worldwide epidemic and would kill 3 presidents. No. I didn't put this down. Cholera. It was almost certainly cholera. Maybe typhus, but cholera. And what spreads cholera? Fecal matter and water. Gee, I wonder when the first sewer system is going to be invented. After the London cholera epidemic. And everyone's going to copy London. Yeah.
I'm like so tired.
He's very worried about the eligible. So, Tyler is now president. The first time a vice president has become president. Let me get a couple things really quick about this. And almost immediately, he pushed for Clay's American, or almost immediately, the Whigs in Congress voted for the tariff and the bank. Clay's American system. They just assumed, even though Tyler was opposed, he's a Whig president. He'll sign it. The Whigs have a very narrow window, so they're going to get laws passed now. This is actually going into the end of 1841, the way they did Congress back then. And he vetoed it. He vetoed it twice. The Whig president vetoed the signature Whig policy. He was a Southern plantation owner. He didn't want a tariff. And so the Whigs kicked him out of the party. In fact, all his cabinet members except one resigned en masse. And the Democrats hated him too. He originally was a Democrat for Andrew Jackson. But when Jackson came out actually for democracy, he left there. So John Tyler is going to be a president without a party. Okay, this is pre-public opinion polls. But it's safe to say he was probably the most unpopular president in history. Nobody liked him except for a few plantation owners. And all he cared about was revenge, to get those that wronged him. So he's still going to be president until 1845. And everybody hates him and he has no party. By the way, his great-granddaughter just died a few years ago. Not great-grand, I'm sorry, his granddaughter just died a few years ago. So he was in his late 70s, in the 1870s, and got married to a 20-year-old woman.
Oh.
Don't think about it. Moving on. Yeah, it's gross. But yeah, so he had a kid right before he died, and his daughter just passed away. So isn't that amazing? John Tyler, who was president, his granddaughter just died a couple years ago. Just weird. She lived to be about 98 or 99. So, last thing really quick. Just got to tell you one treaty real quick. The Webster-Ashburn Treaty will be signed in 1842. And Daniel Webster stayed on as Secretary of State, signed a treaty with the Foreign Minister of Great Britain, Lord Ashburn. Then he resigned too. And this treaty, just basically this. Just real quick. The Maine, dealt with the Maine border and the Great Lakes. There was a war over the Maine border called the Aroostook War. There's the Aroostook River, basically lumberjacks fighting each other. I get this image of like lumberjacks with double-bladed axes going down trees. Okay, that seems kind of fun to me. It wasn't stuff. But it solved that border issue. But Oregon was still there. And don't forget, Texas. And somebody we haven't mentioned in a while is going to make a return. I don't know who. Could be anybody. Okay, I know what you guys want to hear. Davy Crockett. You guys can see this all day. No lurking by the door. One more time. Alan, remind me. I'll get you a great news. You have a German cry. Huh? You have a cry. That's good. One more time, Davy Crockett. Let's do it. No. Davy Crockett.
I'm like, I think I have heard that, but it hurts my soul to hear it again.
It was such a hit, it's hard to put into terms.
I hate that.
Okay, this is sixth grade.
Drink all the water out of it. I drink a lot of water, Sam. I drink more water than you.
Oh shoot, wait. No, multiple choice. Oh wait, yeah.
Hello.
Hello.
Multiple choice ones today?
Yeah.
Okay. Tell me how many you got, because if I don't get ready, you give me all. I don't know that.
So I wrote an entire analysis essay last night.
For what?
English.
Awesome.
And then I put it through the scanning thing that they use.
Oh yeah, the
And
scanning.
It turns out my essay, like the analysis, was way too close to one that has already been written, so then I got to rewrite it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Was it one that you had read before? Did you just?
I haven't read any analysis.
Yeah, we're doing it right now. Can we do it right now?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's get it done. So I'm gonna quick go over in class, so I'll let you do it. Come with me. Yeah. You get a little answer sheet. There's only 22, but I have, this is my generic answer sheet in case I ever want one. They're smaller, so they keep slipping through. Pretty cool, huh?
Okay, thank
You don't get to look at the test, just put letters down and hope for the best.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? Is that fair?
That's fair.
Yeah. Just go in the hallway.
Thank you.
Davy Crockett, king of the wild frontier. You were gone yesterday. Back. You got it. Oh my God, that was better. So, you gotta get this. So you're not all about this. It's that. We'll figure it out. Don't worry. We'll give you a couple days. I know you've been feeling bad. It's good you're here, but I get it. Roman is not here. I don't trust you. Yeah.
Who is Nicholas?
Who?
Who is Nicholas? Was he the bank dude?
Nicholas Bill, yeah, bank dude.
Oh.
The bank dude. I can't believe I said he's the bank dude. Clayton. Jacob. Noah. You guys need this quiz too. Yeah. Right now? Yeah.
Oh, shut up. I started for it yesterday, thinking I could do it yesterday. So.
Oh shoot, we should have done
Yeah.
that.
I can do that before. So I was on the news.
Oh. You don't mind?
It was like as good. I wasn't doing it study yesterday, but I figured I would have some.
I can believe it, yes.
I might put it down. It's like just showing special things. ATBH. There it is.
All right, let me pass this out. Here's the test.
I got you get on there.
You are finally back. And we still got this test to make up, this quiz. And do you want to do it now or wait? Or you're leaving any no matter what? You leave, you gotta go. You're talking about the test.
Oh, I
You're
have to
going.
like actually leave?
Yes, you gotta leave. You have to go in the hallway. So you can do it now or tomorrow. Tomorrow, check it on your way out. Here's a couple more. Let me pass these.
Will this go as like this?
Oh, no.
Yes,
That's weird.
yes.
So probably what makes it clear.
I don't differentiate. All right, everybody. I'll give you the quiz. Let's go take a look at them. This is out of 22. I had some people get 100%, a few people not get 100%. Let me put up the key right now. Please look at the ones you missed and go through it. Before we get to that, I have to